Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
In this video, we will be going through some of the common Trinitarian tactics that are usually employed by them when under pressure. The first of which is deceptive interpretation. When you quote to them an explicit passage that negates the alleged deity of Christ, instead of, addressing it contextually, they resort to deceptive tricks. For example, if you are to quote to them Luke 2:52, wherein it is stated explicitly that Jesus grew in wisdom, they will respond that this means he started revealing more of his wisdom to the people. As evident, they have distorted the apparent meaning of the text. The second such tactic is a sophisticated cope. This is one of the more common ones. If you quote them, for example, the verse where Jesus said that nobody knows the hour, including himself, rather God alone, they will argue that Jesus was speaking merely of his humanity. This, of course, presupposes that Jesus had more than one obvious nature, namely humanity, and on top of that, they ignore the context, which is that Jesus does not speak of two natures. Rather, he is who he truly is, a human who is not all-knowing. For more on Jesus not knowing the hour, check the video linked in the description. The third such tactic is the form of guilt by association fallacy. In the past, we have made a video on this. To summarize, their fallacious reasoning is that because God does a certain act, and Jesus himself does the same act in a likewise manner, Jesus is therefore God. For more on this fallacious reasoning, check out the description for an in-depth refutation. The fourth such tactic would be the hide-and-seek plot. The Trinitarian will quote a vague verse that could be interpreted in a variety of ways to argue for the Trinity or the deity of Christ. But in reality, the Trinitarian is simply distracting his opponent from other, far clearer verses that adequately refute his false interpretation from the vague verse. The fifth such tactic is the denial of obvious concepts. Herein, the Trinitarian will seek to argue that certain concepts are not what they actually mean and have always meant. For example, Son or sons of God has always been applied to created beings, whether angels, humans, or other spiritual beings. Nevertheless, not a divine personal being besides God. In the same manner, he may argue that the term Lord, when applied to Jesus, means God. But because it is evident that Lord is also applied to other beings besides Jesus and God, they will deviate from the fact that it is not a divine title, but a title of authority given to anyone who possesses a kind of authority. The sixth such tactic employed by Trinitarians would be the God-Only Fallacy. The Trinitarian here is deceiving his opponent by arguing the following. There are some actions attributed to God that only he could do, but since Jesus happens to be doing them in a likewise manner, he therefore is God. You may have noticed, this is similar to the form of guilt by association fallacy found in tactic number 3. The difference between them is that in tactic number 3, the issue is their line of reasoning and the conclusion, but here it is not the line of reasoning, rather their faulty and baseless presupposition that the actions cannot be performed by God's messengers because they are exclusive to God, even if God wills his messengers to perform those actions. For more on this, a video will be made and linked in the description in the future. The challenge to them is to prove their presupposition that even if God wills those actions be performed through his messengers, they cannot, because Trinitarians have decided what God can do and cannot do. The seventh such example would be the self-righteous authority. This may often go unnoticed, but it is one of the tactics usually employed quite early on during a dialogue, usually to dismiss your refutations as not worthy of a response, when in reality, it's being employed to avoid an embarrassment. To summarize, the Trinitarian will not objectively respond to any of your arguments. Why? Because he thinks as a Muslim, you are not qualified to interpret the Bible. From the Trinitarian's worldview, he has no reason to interpret the Quran because they do not believe in it, but Muslims have several reasons to interpret the Bible, the main being to correct the deviancy of the Trinitarians. Now the list may go on for hours, but these are the ones that are especially common nowadays in the context of a Muslim giving da'wah to them.
debating you will not grant me validity.
وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.